Right, thought I'd start today on a kind of nice, simple video actually, of how to basically paint some really quick, battle ready Iron Warriors. In order to do that, I've honestly, I've just kept this insanely simple. Standard Adeptus Grey. First, I did a black undercoat because I do like getting a bit of undershading. But if you don't have a black undercoat, just go for a straight mid-tone grey. Okay. Washed it all with a Drakenhof Nightshade. This kind of creates a silvering effect, so a very, it kind of creates a natural metallic effect almost because it's very glossy. Moving on from there, then you can, it's a heavy dry brush of Ironbreaker. I promised myself I was not going to use Lead Belcher doing my Iron Warriors. I just swore to myself I was not going to use that colour, so I went with that approach. And then finally finished off with a very light dry brush of Runefang Steel. I'll show how I did the chevrons, and it's really simple how to do the chevrons, but I won't do that in this video. I'm going to keep it about what I'm interested in. Right. So let's get ourselves up and running then. So I'll just pop these to the side for now. And I'm going to start off with my Drakenhof. So just dead simple. Just pop that in the little fidget popper there, just so I've got a place to paint from. And it's you can see I just like getting this straight on. I'm not, doing a lot of ceremony with it. I need just to get it in and covering the entire model. Now, being a shade, it's going to take quite a while for this to dry, which is why I've prepped one of them in advance so that I can just carry on making a single straight video, no problem. And I'm covering the entire model basically so that it has all the same kind of shading. I'm trying to not let it hang around too much. Always pushing down with a fan works well on these as well. So just keep pushing everything down. I'll get under the recesses and things, but for the most part I'm heading in one direction. Making sure I get behind the shield. And that is layer number one. That is how simple that first layer is. I'm not even, overdoing it. Right. Now that's going to take a little bit of time to dry. So while I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm going to get this guy here who's got his Drakenhof all nicely done. You can see it's got a very glossy shine to it. I'm pretty certain that a far more competent painter than I could even work out how to actually turn that into non-metallic metal, but I'm not going to pretend that I have that level of skill. So my next little thing to do is I've got my Ironbreaker, and I'm going to get it on a dry brush. And then it's going to be quite a heavy dry brush this, so I need to get quite a bit of the paint off, but not too much. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to get enough on the model. And I'm going one direction basically, so I'm just trying to head downwards straight. I'm trying to avoid doing upward strokes. And even with these recesses here, I'm trying to kind of avoid, basically I'm only trying to hit the areas that would potentially have light hitting them. Letting the natural shape of the model dictate where the paint goes. And hopefully you can start to see that because that Drakenhof Nightshade is so glossy, it creates a very shiny armour. By the way, what I'm doing with my brush here is I'm kind of popping the excess into a fidget popper before I rub it on the tissue, so that I can not wasting too much paint, because one thing about dry brushing is you can waste a huge amount of paint, unfortunately. Now hopefully you can see as well that the Drakenhof Nightshade is creating the shadows between the armour too, which is really an effect I want to get proper. And as I said, because Drakenhof Nightshade is a glossy, shiny colour, I think it works very well, you see. Personally, my personal opinion, obviously, everyone's got their own opinion on these kind of things. But because it's nice and shiny and glossy, I think that's what's causing this nice effect. So even though it's in the certain parts are definitely in the shadows, it still looks like metal, just metal in the shadow. Hopefully you can see that, you know, but of course that's, you know, entirely my own personal opinion. So there's, you know, there's phase number 2. So I've got my Nightshade, I've got my first dry brush. I'll just pop them over to the side for now. I'm just gonna get my brush washed off. You'll tend to find them, myself, I personally stick to synthetic brushes for metallics. I've just found that, among other things, they just seem to clean easier. For metallics, whereas when you use non-metallics on synthetic brushes, personally I've found that they stick and stain the brushes easily. Right, now, so you can see on this brush here, when I've used a non-metallic, even after I've cleaned the brush, it's kind of still left a bit of a stain on it anyway. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to add my final layer of Rinse-Fang Steel. Now this is going to be a heavy dry, a light dry brush, a proper light dry brush. So first things first, I'm going to get this on the brush. I'm going to really wipe off some excess. On top of that, I'm just going to pop it on my fidget popper to get a bit more off before I wipe it here. And you can see I've really kind of pulled it. Now I'm going to just try basically to get that final shine on everything, but I'm not overdoing it. I really don't want to overdo this. And really I'm just trying to hit the edges rather than the whole model. Now, I am going to actually potentially follow this approach when I do my Alpha Legion. So I'm going to use this, and then I'm going to see what happens when I run some nice greens over the top. because I think that is going to look gorgeous personally. It probably doesn't, the thing is about the camera here, is it's probably not obvious, that final layer. It's probably more obviously visible in person, but it does create just a slight hint. You know, just a slight tone to the edges. And that's it. That's how simple my process is for doing Iron Warriors. Because, you know, sometimes we just want to get things on the table and be happy with them. And if you've gone full hog over Christmas and got yourself an entire army, you've got a lot of work to do and you might not have time. But there we go, that's my workflow. Hopefully you've found that useful, and maybe I've shown you a few techniques on dry brushing that maybe you didn't really think about before. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.